I gave my stepmom the perfect Mother's Day gift, then watched her face as she realized what it really meant. When my dad married Cassandra, I was 11. Mom had been gone for 13 months. Melanoma that spread faster than anyone expected. One day she was complaining about a headache, and 82 days later I was standing at her grave in a black dress that still had the tags on. Dad waited exactly 1 year before bringing Cassandra home. She worked at his investment firm, client relations, perfect teeth, blonde hair that never moved, the kind of woman who wore heels to other people's barbecues. She makes me happy again, Dad explained, his voice gentle but firm. I need you to try, Emily. So I tried. I helped Cassandra move in, carrying boxes of designer shoes to the closet where Mom's gardening clothes used to hang. I nodded politely when she rearranged our furniture, replacing family photos with abstract art that opened up the space. I even smiled when she transformed Mom's vegetable garden into a meditation patio, because growing our own food is so provincial. For 3 years, I performed the role of grateful stepdaughter. I attended her corporate events, wearing the dresses she bought me. I tolerated her friends who cooed about how mature I was for 14. I kept my grief hidden behind perfect grades and false smiles. Dad didn't notice when I stopped laughing. Too busy with Cassandra's social calendar and the new clients she brought in. Too distracted by their couples' retreats and wine club memberships. Meanwhile, I slept with Mom's sweater under my pillow until it stopped smelling like her. Cassandra tried, in her way. She bought me expensive birthday gifts, always things she would want. She hosted elaborate dinner parties and introduced me as our daughter to important people who never remembered my name. She even started a college fund for me, making sure everyone knew about her generosity. But when I got my period for the first time, it was Google that taught me what to do. When I had nightmares about Mom dying, it was the family dog who comforted me. The breaking point came during sophomore year. I was cast as the lead in the school play, the first thing I'd felt passionate about since Mom died. Opening night fell on the same evening as Cassandra's charity gala. Obviously, you'll need to skip the performance, she said, not looking up from her phone. The Richardsons are bringing their son. He's at Princeton. Connections, Emily. Dad started to object, then stopped when Cassandra placed her hand on his arm. It's just a high school play, he finally said. There will be others. I went to my room and pulled out the antique jewelry box Mom had left me. Inside was her wedding ring, a lock of my baby hair, and a journal I'd never opened, too afraid of confronting her final thoughts. That night, through tears, I read it cover to cover. Most of it was what you'd expect. Her hopes for my future, memories she cherished, advice she wouldn't be able to give in person. But the last entry, dated 2 weeks before she died, was different. If you're reading this, Emily, I need you to know about the safe deposit box. The key is taped inside this cover. What you find there will change everything. I'm so sorry. The key was small and silver, with the bank's name etched into it. The next day, I skipped school and went to First National. The manager recognized me. Mom's family had banked there for generations. Your mother said you'd come eventually, he said, leading me to the vault. Inside the box was a USB drive, several folders of documents, and a letter addressed to me in Mom's handwriting. My dearest Emily, it began. By now, Cassandra has probably worked her way into your lives completely. I've known about her for years. I read the entire letter twice, my hands shaking. Mom had discovered Dad's affair with Cassandra 6 months before her diagnosis. She'd hired a private investigator who documented everything. Hotel receipts, text messages, photos of them together while Mom was picking me up from soccer practice. The investigator's report was meticulous, spanning months. There were photographs of Dad and Cassandra entering hotels in 3 different cities, screenshots of text messages that made my stomach turn. She's taking Emily to her mother's this weekend. Come over. Can you imagine when we don't have to hide anymore? Sometimes I wish she would just disappear. That last one was from Dad, sent 4 months before Mom got sick. I flipped through credit card statements showing dinners at restaurants I'd never heard of on nights when Dad claimed to be working late, gift receipts for jewelry that never made it to Mom's dresser, a lease agreement for an apartment downtown that wasn't in our family records. But there was more. The files contained financial records showing that Dad and Cassandra had been systematically transferring funds from Mom's family trust, money meant for me, into offshore accounts. They'd been planning this for years, waiting for the right moment. Mom's family had built one of the city's largest investment firms over 3 generations. When she married Dad, he was just a promising advisor with ambition. She'd brought him into the company, mentored him, helped him rise to partner. The trust was her family's legacy, and I was supposed to be its future. I found detailed spreadsheets tracking millions diverted through shell companies, fake client accounts, and manipulated investments. The money moved through a dozen countries before disappearing into numbered accounts. Dad's signature appeared on every critical document, Cassandra's on most. The worst part? Medical records suggesting Mom's unexpected decline might not have been so unexpected. Strange test results, unusual prescriptions, toxicology reports she'd commissioned privately when she became suspicious. I started feeling wrong after our anniversary dinner, Mom wrote. Just tired at first, then increasingly ill. The doctors couldn't explain my symptoms. When I began keeping track, I noticed I only felt this way after meals that Thomas prepared specially for me. There were lab reports analyzing hair samples showing elevated levels of heavy metals consistent with long-term poisoning. Results from tests on food samples from our home. Notes from consultations with 3 different medical specialists who all noted the unusual progression of her symptoms. I can't prove anything, Mom wrote, and by the time you read this, it won't matter for me. But I couldn't leave you unprotected. The final page of her letter detailed her counterplan. A second, secret trust she'd established in my name. The house and business I thought Dad controlled. Technically mine when I turned 18. Mom had changed her will 2 weeks before she died, working with lawyers Dad didn't know existed. I've made sure that what's rightfully yours remains yours, she wrote. The trustees will contact you on your 18th birthday automatically, but if you find this letter sooner, you can reach them using the information in the enclosed envelope. They're ready whenever you are. I sat in the bank's private room for hours, absorbing everything. When I finally emerged, I was different. The grief and confusion that had defined me for 3 years had crystallized into something harder, something focused. I didn't confront Dad immediately. I didn't run away or call the police. I did something more frightening. I became the perfect daughter. For the next 2 years, I performed flawlessly. I excelled in school, joined the clubs Cassandra suggested, attended every mind-numbing corporate function. I wore the right clothes, said the right things, and never, ever let them see what I knew. At night, I meticulously documented their ongoing schemes. Each time Dad mentioned a difficult client or complex investment strategy at dinner, I researched the companies involved, tracking the money through their labyrinth of fake entities. I created my own spreadsheets, building on Mom's work. My bedroom became my command center. I installed a hidden safe behind my bookshelf where I kept copies of everything. I recorded conversations at family dinners, business discussions they had when they thought I wasn't listening. I photographed documents Dad brought home and left carelessly on his desk, trusting that his 16-year-old daughter would never understand their significance. 6 months after finding Mom's letter, I felt ready to contact her trustees. The envelope contained 3 business cards: a forensic accountant, a lawyer specializing in financial crimes, and a retired judge who had been Mom's father's closest friend. I met them at the judge's home on a Saturday when I was supposedly at debate team practice. I told them everything over the phone, but seeing their faces as they reviewed the actual evidence was different. The accountant closed his eyes briefly when he saw the extent of the fraud. The lawyer swore under her breath. The judge looked at me with a mix of sadness and cold anger. "Your mother was one of the finest people I've ever known," he said. "What do you want to do, Emily?" I had spent months considering my options. I could have exposed everything immediately, sending Dad and Cassandra to prison. I could have run away, waiting until I turned 18 to claim my inheritance. I could have confronted them, forcing a painful reckoning. Instead, I chose the path Mom had started: methodical, precise justice. "I want to learn everything," I told them, "about the business, about finance and law, and how to run a company. I want to be ready when I take it all back." The judge nodded, unsurprised. "Your mother said you'd say that. She left instructions for us if you chose this path." For the next 18 months, I lived a double life. At home and school, I was the perfect, accomplished daughter that Cassandra could brag about at parties. But 3 evenings a week, I slipped away to study groups and volunteer work that were actually intensive training sessions with my secret team. The forensic accountant taught me how to read financial statements, detect fraud, and understand the complex web of transactions that kept the family business running. The lawyer educated me on corporate law, contracts, and the specific legal frameworks that would eventually allow me to seize control. The judge introduced me to his contacts in banking, investment, and regulatory bodies, people who had respected Mom and were disgusted by what had happened to her company. Meanwhile, I worked with Mom's lawyers, preparing everything: the trust, the evidence, the plan. I graduated high school at 16, a year early. Dad and Cassandra were thrilled, their prodigy heading to Yale early with a full scholarship. What they didn't know was that I'd also been taking business and finance courses online, learning everything about Dad's company, about the accounts they thought were hidden. "We're so proud of you," Dad said at my small graduation party. "Just family and a few of their close friends. No one from my school. No one who really knew me. You've exceeded all our expectations," Cassandra added, her arm around my shoulder for the photographer they'd hired. "Yale early admission. The board is already excited about your future with the firm." I smiled and thanked them, knowing that in less than 2 years, I would own that board. The summer before college, Cassandra announced she wanted to adopt me legally. "You're my daughter in every way that matters," she said, touching my cheek during a lunch at her favorite overpriced restaurant. "Let's make it official before you go to college." I studied her face, looking for any sign of genuine emotion. There was a certain tension around her eyes, a calculation in the way she glanced at Dad before returning her gaze to me. This wasn't about love. It was about securing her position. An adopted daughter would strengthen her claim to the family business should anything happen to Dad. I smiled and hugged her, whispering that nothing would make me happier. "We should celebrate," Dad said, already signaling for the check. "Maybe a weekend in the Hamptons? We could invite the Prestons. Their son is at Harvard Law." That sounds perfect, I replied, thinking of the file I'd compiled on the Preston's failing software company and the mysterious infusion of cash it had received from one of Dad's shell corporations last year. That night, I called an emergency meeting with my trustees. We gathered in the judge's book-lined study after I told Dad and Cassandra I was spending the night with a friend to celebrate graduation. They want me to sign adoption papers, I explained. I need to know if that affects our plan. The lawyer spread documents across the mahogany table. Actually, this could work in our favor. The adoption process requires financial disclosures. We'll get an updated picture of their assets. And it changes nothing about your mother's trust. That's ironclad. How close are we? I asked. The accountant adjusted his glasses. We've documented 67% of the missing funds, traced them through 4 countries to accounts we can identify. It's more than enough for criminal charges. And the evidence about your mother's illness? The judge asked gently. This was the hardest part for me. The possibility that Dad had not just betrayed Mom, but actively poisoned her. The medical experts we'd consulted couldn't definitively prove murder, but the pattern was suspicious enough for an investigation. We keep that separate for now, I decided. One battle at a time. As I prepared to leave, the judge handed me a small wrapped package. Your mother left this with specific instructions to be given to you when you were ready to move forward. Inside was a vintage Montblanc pen that had belonged to my grandfather. She used this to sign her first major acquisition, the judge explained. Said she wanted you to have it when you were ready to take back what's yours. I carried that pen with me everywhere after that night. A talisman, a promise. 2 weeks later, Mother's Day arrived. Cassandra had always made a big production of it. Expensive brunches, professional photographers to document her mother-daughter bond for social media. This year, she'd planned a garden party for 30 of their closest friends. The adoption announcement would be the centerpiece. I spent the week before carefully preparing my gift, working late into the night in my room, compiling documents, organizing evidence, crafting the perfect presentation. The irony wasn't lost on me. This was the most thoughtful gift I'd ever created for her. The morning of the party dawned sunny and mild, perfect weather for Cassandra's carefully orchestrated event. The caterers arrived at 7, followed by florists, event planners, and a small army of staff transforming our backyard into an elegant venue that looked nothing like the wild garden Mom had loved. I found Cassandra in her dressing room, surrounded by rejected outfit options. What do you think? She asked, holding up 2 nearly identical cream-colored dresses. The Dior or the Chanel? The Chanel, I said, noticing how she immediately set aside the Dior I'd selected. I have something special for you, I told her, handing her an elegantly wrapped box with a silver bow. Oh, you didn't have to, she said, her surprise seeming almost genuine. We both knew I'd never given her a Mother's Day gift before. I wanted to, for today's announcement. She set the box aside. I'll open it later during the party. More special that way. I'd rather you open it now, I insisted. It's personal. Something in my tone made her pause. She studied my face, then reached for the box. Inside was a custom-bound book. On the cover, embossed in gold, A Daughter's Gratitude. Oh, Emily, she breathed, clearly expecting a collection of sentimental photos and tributes. Her hands trembled slightly as she opened it. The first page showed a picture of Mom, smiling from before she got sick. What is this? She asked, her voice tight. Keep going, I said gently. It gets better. Page by page, the book told the story Mom had left me. Hotel receipts, bank statements, medical reports, each carefully annotated in my neat handwriting. I watched her face transform as she turned each page, confusion giving way to shock, then anger, then fear. By the time she reached the section on the diverted trust funds, her makeup had started to run from the sweat beading on her forehead. This is absurd, she whispered, but kept turning pages, unable to stop. In the final section, details of the restructured trust, the legal proceedings already in motion, and the meeting scheduled tomorrow with the FBI's Financial Crimes Division. Those offshore accounts you and Dad set up? I said conversationally, perching on the edge of her vanity. They're not as untraceable as you thought. Did you know that 17 countries have signed new banking transparency agreements in the last 5 years? Or that electronic fund transfers leave timestamps that can be matched to your cell phone's location data? Her face drained of color. Your father and I will be very interested in the terms I'm offering, I finished, still smiling as the doorbell rang, announcing the first guests. Much better than prison, she stood, knocking over her mimosa. You ungrateful little... Careful, I whispered. Your guests are watching, and I'm still deciding whether to show them what's in Chapter 3. She glanced down at the book, still open to a page showing her text messages to Dad from the week Mom was hospitalized. Messages complaining about hospital visiting hours interfering with their dinner reservations. What do you want? She hissed, straightening her dress with shaking hands. You're going to go downstairs and host your party. You're going to smile and laugh and be the perfect hostess. And tomorrow morning at 9, you and Dad will meet me at Judge Henderson's office to discuss terms for your continued freedom. Her eyes darted around the room, perhaps looking for a way out, finding none. This is blackmail. No, I corrected her. This is justice, with a touch of mercy if you earn it. I moved toward the door. You have 30 seconds to fix your makeup. People are waiting. The party lasted 3 excruciating hours. Cassandra maintained her composure through trembling hands and a fixed smile that never reached her eyes. I played the adoring daughter perfectly, toasting her influence on my life, watching her flinch at each double meaning only we understood. Emily has been such a blessing, Cassandra told Mrs. Henderson, the judge's wife. I couldn't love her more if she were my own blood. And Cassandra has taught me so much, I added, meeting her gaze steadily, about loyalty, about consequences. Mrs. Henderson looked between us, sensing the undercurrent but unable to place it. Well, you're obviously wonderful for each other. Dad texted that he was running late from his golf game, just as well. His gift was waiting in his office. An identical book, with additional documents specific to his role in the fraud. The guests gradually departed as the afternoon waned, complimenting Cassandra on the lovely event and congratulating me on Yale. I stood beside her at the door, accepting hugs from women who smelled of expensive perfume and insecurity, shaking hands with men who'd known my grandfather but couldn't quite remember my name. Is everything all right with Cass? One of Dad's partners asked me quietly. She seems tense. Oh, she's just emotional about the adoption, I explained. Today means so much to her. After the last guest left, Cassandra disappeared upstairs. I found her 20 minutes later, frantically packing a suitcase. Going somewhere? I asked from the doorway. She whirled around, a handful of jewelry clutched in her fist. You can't prove any of this. It's circumstantial. The FBI doesn't think so. Neither does the SEC. But feel free to run. They're expecting that. There's an agent parked at the end of our street. Has been for 3 days. This was a bluff. The authorities weren't involved yet. That was part of the leverage in my negotiation strategy. But Cassandra didn't know that. She sank onto the bed, her half-packed suitcase open beside her. What happens now? Now we wait for Dad. Then we talk terms. Dad arrived an hour later, calling Cassandra's name as he entered. I met him in the foyer, his gift in my hands. Where's Cass? How was the party? He asked, loosening his tie. She's upstairs. And I think you should open this first. I watched the same sequence of emotions cross his face as he paged through the evidence. Unlike Cassandra, he went completely silent, his lawyer's training kicking in even in shock. When he finally looked up, his expression was unreadable. Where did you get all this? Mom left it for me, along with instructions. Something like pain flickered across his features, quickly suppressed. Emily, whatever you think you know, is documented in triplicate and stored in multiple secure locations, I finished for him, including evidence about Mom's health decline that suggests more than just financial crimes. His face went ashen at that. You can't possibly believe that you poisoned her? I don't know. The evidence is inconclusive, but strong enough for an investigation if I choose to pursue it. He closed the book carefully as if it might explode. What do you want? The same thing I told your wife. 9 a.m. tomorrow. Judge Henderson's office. We'll discuss how you can avoid prison. That evening, after the guests left, I found Cassandra sitting alone in the dark of Mom's former garden, surrounded by the sterile white furniture she'd chosen to replace the wildflowers. Why now? She asked, not looking at me. Why wait all this time? I sat beside her, smoothing my dress. Mom taught me patience, and I needed to understand everything first. What do you want? I'd rehearsed this moment for 2 years, imagining satisfaction, maybe even joy. Instead, looking at this woman who'd helped destroy my mother, I felt hollow. Dad transfers control of the company to me through the original trust mechanism. You both resign publicly, but continue as consultants under my supervision. The money you diverted returns to the trust. In exchange, I don't pursue criminal charges. She laughed bitterly. You're 16. You can't run a company. I'm almost 17, with a team of Mom's trustees who've been waiting for this day, and I've been training for it half my life. Dad's heavy footsteps approached across the patio. Cassandra's fingers dug into the armrests. He'll never agree. I stood, straightening the necklace Mom had left me. He already has. Check your phone. While we'd been talking, Dad had found his own copy of my Mother's Day gift. His message to Cassandra was just 3 words. She knows everything. Dad joined us on the patio, his face haggard in the fading light. You didn't have to do it this way, he said quietly. You could have come to me directly. Like Mom did? I asked. When she confronted you about the affair 4 years ago? Or when she questioned the trust disbursements? How did those direct conversations work out? He had no answer for that. The company isn't just numbers on a spreadsheet, he tried instead. It's relationships, client trust. If you force us out, the damage could be already mitigated, I interrupted. Mom's original team is ready to step in. Most of them never trusted you anyway. They stayed out of loyalty to her memory. Cassandra glared at him. You said they were all loyal to you, that you'd secured their support. He lied, I told her. Like he lied about the prenup you signed. The one with the infidelity clause that leaves you with nothing if you divorce. Her head snapped toward him. What prenup? The one I have a copy of, I said, along with evidence of your continued affair with Ryan Donahue from legal. Did you really think those hotel charges wouldn't show up in the expense audits? The color drained from her face. Dad looked confused, then furious as understanding dawned. You told me that was over, he growled. It is, she insisted, but her eyes darted away from his. Emily is manipulating you. Actually, that's your specialty, I said, standing. I prefer direct approaches. 9 o'clock tomorrow. Don't be late and don't try to leave town. I have people watching the house. I left them on the patio, their angry whispers following me inside. In my room, I called Judge Henderson to confirm our meeting, then emailed the full dossier to my trustees with instructions to release it to authorities if I didn't check in by noon the next day. Sleep didn't come easily that night. I lay awake listening to their muffled arguments down the hall, the occasional sound of something breaking, a door slamming. Around 3 in the morning, I heard a car start and drive away. By dawn, the house was silent. I dressed carefully for the meeting. A conservative suit Mom had bought me for my first academic competition. Her pearl earrings, minimal makeup, professional, serious, older than my years. When I came downstairs, I found Dad alone at the kitchen island, staring into a coffee cup, still wearing yesterday's clothes. Where's Cassandra? I asked, though I already suspected. Gone, he said flatly. Took her jewelry and her car, left her phone so she couldn't be tracked. I'd anticipated this contingency. That complicates things, but doesn't change them. She's not the primary stakeholder anyway. He looked up, his eyes red-rimmed and hollow. You look like her, he said unexpectedly. Your mother, when she was fighting for something. The comparison both warmed and pained me. We should go. The judge doesn't like tardiness. The meeting was brief but comprehensive. Dad, stripped of his usual confidence, signed every document placed before him: power of attorney, transfer of voting rights, resignation letter. Judge Henderson guided him through each step, his voice neutral, but his eyes cold. You understand that these terms are conditional on your cooperation with the financial recovery team? Any attempt to conceal assets or obstruct the process will trigger the criminal complaints we've prepared. Dad nodded mechanically. And the company announcement will follow the script provided, citing family succession planning and a desire to honor Catherine's legacy as reasons for the transition. Another nod. Sign here and here. Initial these pages. When it was done, Judge Henderson slid a final document across the table. This stipulates that you will not contact Emily directly, except through approved channels until she turns 18. All communication goes through my office or the trustees. Dad's head snapped up. What? That's my daughter. You can't sign it, I said quietly, or I release the medical evidence. His hand shook as he signed the paper. When he set down the pen, Mom's Mont Blanc that I'd brought specifically for this purpose, his shoulders slumped with a finality that made him look suddenly old. Can I at least explain? He asked, his voice barely audible. I've read all your explanations, I replied. In your emails to Cassandra, in the memos justifying the transfers, in the statement you prepared for the board last year, evaluating me as a potential future figurehead with limited actual authority. I think I understand perfectly. Judge Henderson ended the meeting, informing Dad that a car was waiting to take him to a hotel. He would be permitted to return to the house next week to collect personal belongings under supervision. As Dad stood to leave, he paused beside my chair. Your mother would be proud, he said, and I couldn't tell if he meant it as a compliment or an accusation. I know, I answered simply. 2 months later, I sat at the head of the conference table in what had been Dad's office. The company transition had been announced as a family succession plan, celebrated with press releases about the youngest female CEO in the industry. Dad remained as a figurehead, controlled by ironclad contracts that monitored his every financial move. He'd kept the house, his social standing, and avoided prison. In return, I received what was rightfully mine, plus his complete submission to quarterly reviews where I examined every aspect of his professional life. The trustees formed my executive team, guiding me through the countless decisions required to stabilize the company after years of Dad's manipulation. I deferred Yale for a year, focusing instead on practical business education at the firm. Cassandra resurfaced in Miami 3 weeks after she fled. The FBI picked her up trying to access one of the offshore accounts we'd flagged. She spent 2 nights in jail before Dad's lawyers negotiated her release in exchange for her full cooperation. She returned to Connecticut under strict monitoring, living in a company-owned condo and working as a client liaison with severely limited authority. The prenup I'd mentioned proved prophetic. Dad filed for divorce citing abandonment and infidelity, leaving her with only what the separation agreement we'd crafted allowed. She fought it initially, threatening to expose the company's fraud, until my lawyers reminded her that she'd be the first target of any investigation. It wasn't justice for Mom, nothing could be, but it was the beginning of something she'd wanted for me: control of my own future, protection of the legacy she'd built, accountability for those who had betrayed her. The search for definitive proof about Mom's illness continued quietly. I hired specialists to re-examine tissue samples the hospital had preserved, ordered new tests on items from her vanity that I'd kept untouched, interviewed medical staff who had treated her, The results remained frustratingly inconclusive. Suspicious patterns, but no smoking gun. Dad maintained his innocence on that front, even in private meetings with his attorneys where he admitted to everything else. The cancer was real, he insisted. I never touched her medication, never altered her food. I wanted her gone, yes. I'm guilty of wishing her dead, but not of making it happen. I didn't know whether to believe him. Part of me needed him to be guilty of everything. A complete monster whose destruction I could pursue without reservation. Another part desperately wanted this one line to remain uncrossed, preserving some tiny fragment of the father I'd once loved. The company flourished under new management. We unwound Dad's complicated schemes, recovered most of the diverted funds, rebuilt client relationships damaged by his shortcuts. I worked 16-hour days, sleeping on the office couch more often than at home. The house no longer felt like one. I sold it 6 months after taking control, moving into a downtown apartment within walking distance of the office. Dad relocated to a smaller house in the suburbs, stripped of his country club memberships and most of his social circle, when the carefully worded but transparent company statement made it clear he'd been forced out. Last week, I visited Mom's grave for the first time since reading her letter. I did what you asked, I told her, placing wildflowers against the stone. The company is safe. Your legacy is protected. I wish you could see it. As I turned to leave, I noticed a familiar figure watching from a distance. Cassandra, clutching a small bouquet of her own. Our eyes met across the cemetery. She didn't approach but nodded once before walking away. Some lessons take years to teach. Some gifts keep giving long after they're open. Every Mother's Day since then, I send Cassandra the same thing. A single photograph of Mom, smiling in her garden, with a note that reads, "Thinking of you today." She never responds, but I know she understands. It's the only language we have left. And it says everything that matters. My aunt stole my wedding venue, so I waited 2 years and booked her daughter's dream location first. When I got engaged to Derek, I was over the moon. We'd been together since college, and I'd been dreaming of our wedding for years. Derek had proposed on the beach where we'd had our first date, getting down on one knee as the sun set behind him. The ring was perfect, a vintage sapphire that had belonged to his grandmother, exactly what I'd always wanted instead of a traditional diamond. I had my heart set on the Rosewood Manor, this gorgeous historic estate with gardens that looked like something from a fairy tale. The place had sweeping marble staircases, crystal chandeliers imported from France, and rose gardens that bloomed year-round in climate-controlled greenhouses. The ballroom had floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked a lake, and they allowed couples to have their ceremony in the garden pavilion that looked like it belonged in a romantic movie. It was booked solid for 2 years out, but I'd been calling every month since Derek proposed, hoping for a cancellation. The coordinator, Mrs. Patterson, had started recognizing my voice. "Still hoping for September, dear?" she'd ask kindly. "September 15th specifically," I'd tell her every time. "That's the anniversary of our first date." Finally, 8 months before our planned date, they called. Someone had canceled their September wedding, a nasty divorce where the bride had caught her fiancé cheating with her maid of honor. They had one weekend available. September 15th, exactly what we wanted. I screamed so loud Derek came running from the kitchen thinking something was wrong, still holding the spatula he'd been using to flip pancakes. "We got it," I sobbed into the phone with Mrs. Patterson. "We'll take it." "Wonderful, dear. I'm so happy this worked out for you. You've been so patient and persistent." I put down a $5,000 deposit immediately, using the credit card Derek and I had been saving on specifically for wedding expenses. We'd been living like college students for months, splitting grocery bills and avoiding restaurants to save every penny. That evening, I called my mom to share the news. This was the venue where I'd dreamed of walking down the aisle since I was 12 and attended my cousin Rebecca's wedding there. I'd spent the entire reception that night wandering the grounds, imagining my own someday. "Oh, honey, that's wonderful," she said, and I could hear the genuine joy in her voice. "Have you told the family yet?" I called everyone that night. Grandparents, cousins, my dad's sister Vivian. Everyone was thrilled for us. Vivian seemed especially excited, asking detailed questions about the venue, the date, even the specific package we'd chosen. "How much was the deposit?" she asked during our 20-minute conversation. "What's their cancellation policy? Do they require references or proof of income? What about insurance requirements?" I thought she was just being thorough, maybe considering the venue for her daughter Melody someday. Vivian was a successful corporate lawyer who specialized in contract disputes, always asking pointed questions about fine print and legal protections. I answered everything honestly, too excited to be suspicious. Looking back, I should have realized she was gathering intelligence. "The ceremony space holds up to 200 guests," I told her, "and the reception ballroom can accommodate 150 for dinner. We're planning on about 120 people total. What time is your ceremony scheduled for?" 4 o'clock, golden hour for photos, then cocktails on the terrace during sunset. She asked about catering options, floral arrangements, even which bridal suite I'd reserved for getting ready. I shared every detail, thrilled that someone in the family was taking such an interest in our wedding plans. 2 weeks later, I got a call from Rosewood Manor that would change everything. "Miss Rodriguez, I'm afraid there's been a terrible mix-up," Mrs. Patterson said, her voice strained and apologetic. She sounded like she'd been crying. "We accidentally double-booked September 15th. Another bride has the same date." My stomach dropped to the floor. The room started spinning. "But I have a signed contract. I put down a deposit 2 weeks ago. You called me personally." "Yes, well, the other party also has a contract, and their deposit was significantly larger, $15,000 compared to your 5. We're prepared to offer you a full refund plus $500 compensation for the inconvenience. $15,000? Who puts down $15,000 for a wedding venue? Mrs. Patterson was quiet for a long moment. The other bride's mother is an attorney. She's claiming we made a verbal agreement for that date months ago and is threatening legal action if we don't honor it. We simply can't afford to fight this in court. So you're breaking a signed contract to avoid a lawsuit from someone who's lying? I'm so sorry. This has never happened before. We'll put you at the top of our list for any future cancellations. I hung up, devastated. Derek found me sobbing on our couch, still in my work clothes, mascara streaking down my face. He held me while I cried for hours, stroking my hair and promising we'd find something even better. The next day, my mom called with a strange, uncomfortable tone in her voice. Honey, I have something to tell you. Vivian's daughter, Melody, just got engaged. My blood ran cold. Melody was 24, had been dating her boyfriend Cameron for only 8 months, and had never shown any interest in marriage before. When? Last week, right after you called the family about your venue, and she booked Rosewood Manor for September 15th. The pieces clicked into place like a puzzle from hell. Vivian had pumped me for information, then somehow convinced the venue to give her our date. She'd used every detail I'd shared, the date, the time, the package, even the bridal suite, to make it sound like she'd been planning this wedding for months. Mom, that's impossible. Melody wasn't even engaged when I called Vivian. I know, honey. The whole family is talking about it. The timeline doesn't make sense. I called Mrs. Patterson back, demanding answers. The other bride's mother claims they had a verbal agreement for September 15th dating back 6 months, she said defensively. She has documentation of venue visits and email inquiries. What kind of documentation? Photos of her daughter at the venue, saved email conversations about pricing. Later, I would discover that Vivian had driven to Rosewood Manor the day after our phone call, taken photos of Melody posing around the grounds, and backdated emails using her legal knowledge of digital forensics. She'd built an entire fake paper trail in 48 hours. She's lying, I told Mrs. Patterson. And you know it. Check your own records. I've been calling you monthly for almost a year. I understand your frustration, but we have to protect ourselves legally. Ms. Hartwell is a very prominent attorney, and she's threatened to sue us for breach of contract, discriminatory booking practices, and intentional interference with business relations. We're a small family business. We can't afford that kind of legal battle. That's when I realized what had really happened. Vivian hadn't just stolen our date. She'd used her law degree and reputation to bully a small business into submission. She'd made threats she probably couldn't back up legally, but Mrs. Patterson didn't know that. At the family barbecue that weekend, the dynamics were immediately different. Everyone was walking on eggshells, stealing glances between Melody and me. My cousins knew something was wrong, but nobody wanted to address the elephant in the room. Vivian cornered me by the dessert table with fake sympathy dripping from her voice. I heard about your venue situation, she said, not meeting my eyes. These things happen in the wedding industry. Maybe it's a sign you should have a simpler wedding anyway. Not everyone needs such an extravagant affair. The condescension in her tone made my blood boil. She was talking to me like I was a child who'd been denied a toy at the store. Melody flounced by in a designer dress I recognized from Instagram, $400 for something she'd probably wear once. She was gushing to our cousins about her sudden wedding plans. I've wanted to get married at Rosewood since I was little, she said, which was complete bullshit. She'd never mentioned the venue once in her life. Mommy made sure I got the perfect date. September 15th is going to be absolutely magical. She emphasized the date like a knife twist, making sure I heard it. Isn't that the same date you wanted? My cousin David asked innocently. Melody shrugged. Great minds think alike, I guess. Though we booked first, so that was the moment I decided to play the long game. Standing there, watching Melody bask in her stolen venue while Vivian smirked behind her wine glass, I made a silent promise. This wasn't over. I smiled sweetly at Vivian. You're absolutely right. Everything happens for a reason. For the next 2 years, I watched and waited like a spider spinning an invisible web. Derek and I had a beautiful wedding at Mountain View Farm, a rustic venue that actually suited our personalities better than the formal manner. The ceremony was in a wildflower meadow with the mountains as our backdrop. It was intimate, personal, and cost half as much as Rosewood would have, but I never forgot what Vivian had done. More importantly, I never forgot the smug satisfaction on her face when she'd told me to settle for something simpler. I kept tabs on Melody through social media, studying every post like I was preparing for a doctoral dissertation. The girl was obsessed with status and posted constantly about her future wedding plans, her dream honeymoon destinations, her ideal dress designers. She documented every bridal magazine she bought, every wedding show she attended, every venue she toured. There was one location that appeared in her posts more than any other, going back to her college years, the Chateau Belmont, a castle-like estate 2 hours upstate that only hosted 12 weddings per year. It was the most exclusive venue in the region, with a year-long waiting list and pricing that started at $30,000 just for the venue rental. Melody had been posting photos of Chateau Belmont since she was 19, calling it her future wedding venue in every caption. She'd drive there just to take Instagram photos in front of the gates, claiming it was going to be the most exclusive wedding ever someday. She'd screenshot magazine articles about celebrities who'd married there and post them with captions like, "This will be me in a few years." The chateau was everything Melody valued: expensive, exclusive, and guaranteed to make her the envy of everyone she knew. It was also completely out of her league financially, but that had never stopped her from dreaming publicly about it. When Melody and her boyfriend Cameron finally got engaged last month after 3 years together, I watched her Instagram stories obsessively. She posted a video tour of Chateau Belmont the day after Cameron proposed, with the caption, "Finally going to make this dream come true, calling tomorrow to book our date." She'd clearly been planning this moment for years, waiting for Cameron to propose so she could claim her prize venue. That's when I struck. I called the chateau at exactly 9 a.m. the next morning, before they'd even finished their first cup of coffee. "Good morning, this is Chateau Belmont. How may I help you? I'd like to inquire about availability for a wedding next September," I told the coordinator, my voice steady and professional. "Certainly. Let me check our calendar. We have September 8th and September 22nd available." Perfect. Melody's Instagram had shown a screenshot of her calendar app with September 22nd, circled in red and labeled Dream Wedding Date, Chateau Belmont. "I'll take September 22nd, I said without hesitation. "I'd like to put down a deposit today." "Wonderful. Our standard deposit is $15,000 to secure the date, with the balance due 60 days before your event." I'd been saving for this moment for 2 years. While Derek and I lived in our tiny apartment, driving used cars and cooking dinner at home every night, I'd been building what we privately called our Justice Fund. We had exactly $25,000 sitting in a separate savings account, money we'd squirreled away by working overtime, selling things we didn't need, and living like monks. "I can do 20,000, I said. "I want to ensure the date is absolutely locked in, with no possibility of cancellation or schedule changes." "That's very generous, but 15 is our standard." 20, I insisted firmly. "I've heard stories about venues double booking dates, and I want this contract to be ironclad. Money talks, and I want mine to speak very loudly." The coordinator was quiet for a moment, probably calculating how much extra profit they'd make. "We can certainly accommodate that. A $20,000 deposit would give you our platinum priority status, with additional perks and guarantees." An hour later, I had a signed contract for September 22nd at Chateau Belmont, with more legal protections than most people have for buying a house. The contract explicitly stated that the date could not be transferred, canceled, or modified without written consent from both parties. Then I waited. 3 days later, Melody's Instagram story showed her crying in her car outside the chateau's gates. "I can't believe this happened," she sobbed to the camera, her perfect makeup streaking down her face. "Someone booked my dream venue literally hours before I called. They won't even put me on a waiting list because the other couple paid such a huge deposit that they have platinum status." She filmed herself walking up to the main entrance, only to be turned away by security. "They said the other bride has exclusive booking rights for that entire weekend. I've been dreaming about this place for 6 years, and now it's gone." I screenshot the video and saved it to my phone, along with every other post from her meltdown. Evidence for later. For the next several weeks, I watched Melody's increasingly frantic posts about trying to find a replacement venue. She toured every high-end location within 100 miles, but nothing compared to the chateau. Everything was either too common, too small, too expensive, or already booked by other brides who'd planned ahead. Meanwhile, I started planning phase 2 of my revenge. I created a fake Instagram account under the name Elena Vasquez, complete with a backstory about being a marketing consultant from Chicago. I followed all the family members, including Melody, and started posting lifestyle content that would blend in naturally. Then I began sharing photos from Chateau Belmont's website and social media, talking about my upcoming wedding there. "So blessed to have booked the chateau for September 22nd, I posted, using hashtags I knew Melody followed religiously. "Can't wait for the most magical day ever. Chateau Belmont, dream wedding, arch blessed." Within hours, Melody had found the post and left a comment. "OMG, so jealous. That's literally my dream venue. How did you manage to book it?" "I called the same day and they said it was taken," I replied publicly, twisting the knife a little deeper. "Just got really lucky with timing. Had to put down a huge deposit, but so worth it for my dream wedding. Sometimes you have to invest in your dreams, you know? Worth it." That night, Melody posted a bitter story about fake people on Instagram showing off their perfect lives and rich girls who don't appreciate what they have. The comments on her posts became increasingly savage as her friends started pointing out that she'd had years to book the chateau if it was really that important to her. "Girl, you've been posting about this place since college," one friend wrote. "Why didn't you just save up and book it earlier?" Melody's response was exactly what I expected. "It's not that simple. Do you know how expensive it is? My mom was helping me figure out financing." More evidence that even with Vivian's lawyer salary, they couldn't actually afford the venue Melody had been fantasizing about. At Christmas dinner, the family drama reached its peak. Melody spent the entire meal complaining about her venue struggles, while Vivian made increasingly pointed comments about people being unreasonable with their wedding expectations and not understanding how the world works. "Maybe you should consider something more modest," my mom suggested gently, trying to diffuse the tension. Vivian's face darkened like a storm cloud. "Melody deserves the best. Some people just don't understand the importance of maintaining family standards and creating memorable experiences." She shot a look at me that could have melted steel. My grandmother, bless her, decided to stir the pot. "What about that lovely manor where you had your wedding, Melody? The one with the roses?" "That was just the venue, Grandma," Melody said dismissively. "The chateau is in a completely different league. It's where celebrities get married." That's when my cousin David chimed in, completely oblivious to the minefield he was stepping into. "Didn't you guys book Elena's dream venue for your wedding a couple years ago? Maybe you should ask Elena to return the favor and hook Melody up with contacts at her venue." The table went dead silent. You could have heard a pin drop in the next county. Vivian's face cycled through about 6 different emotions before settling on barely controlled rage. "That was completely different," she said through gritted teeth. There was a legitimate scheduling conflict that had to be resolved through proper legal channels. Wasn't Elena there first, though? David continued, digging his own grave with enthusiasm. I remember her calling everyone about getting Rosewood Manor, like months before Melody even got engaged. My uncle tried to change the subject, but David was on a roll. Actually, wasn't the timeline kind of weird? Elena called us about booking her venue, then 2 weeks later Melody was suddenly engaged and had the same venue on the same date? What are the odds of that? I spoke up for the first time all evening, my voice sweet as honey. It's fine, David. Everything worked out for the best. Our barn wedding was absolutely perfect. Sometimes the universe has better plans than we do. Vivian looked like she wanted to strangle me with the Christmas garland. After dinner, she cornered me in the kitchen while I was helping with dishes, her lawyer mask firmly in place. I know what you're doing, she hissed, keeping her voice low so the others wouldn't hear. What am I doing? I asked innocently, continuing to dry the wine glasses. You booked that chateau to spite Melody. This is petty and childish, and it's hurting an innocent girl who's just trying to plan her wedding. I turned to face her fully, dropping all pretense of politeness for the first time in 2 years. You threatened to sue my wedding venue to steal my date. You used your law degree to bully a small business into screwing over their actual customer. You built a fake paper trail to make it look like Melody had booked first. And then you told me to have a simpler wedding because I wasn't worth an extravagant affair. Her mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. That was business, she finally sputtered. Venues double book all the time. We were protecting Melody's interests. So is this, I replied sweetly. I saved up for 2 years to afford my dream venue. Just like you taught me, sometimes you have to be willing to pay more to get what you want. Sometimes you have to use every advantage you have. You're not even using it. How do you know? Maybe Derek and I are planning a vow renewal. Maybe I want to celebrate our 2nd anniversary somewhere special. Maybe I'm going to auction it off for charity. My contract doesn't require me to justify my plans to you. The truth was, I hadn't decided what to do with the booking yet. Part of me wanted to actually use it just to spite them, throw the most extravagant vow renewal in family history. Part of me was considering selling it to someone else at cost, just to ensure Melody couldn't have it. But as I stood there watching Vivian's face turn purple with rage, a better idea started forming. You can't be serious about keeping it just to hurt Melody. Why not? You kept my venue just to help her. Turnabout is fair play. That's completely different. No, it's not. You saw an opportunity to give your daughter something she wanted, and you took it regardless of who got hurt. I'm doing exactly the same thing. But you're hurting an innocent person. I laughed. Actually laughed out loud. Innocent? Melody knew exactly what you'd done. She gloated about having my venue at the barbecue. She emphasized the date to make sure I heard it. She posted about her dream wedding on Instagram knowing I'd see it. She's not innocent, she's complicit. Vivian stood there for a long moment, probably trying to figure out if she could threaten me the same way she'd threatened Mrs. Patterson. What do you want? She asked finally. Nothing you can give me, I said. You can't undo what you did. You can't give me back my original wedding date or the venue I'd dreamed about since I was 12. You can't erase the months of stress and heartbreak you caused. This isn't about what I want anymore. It's about consequences. So you're going to destroy my daughter's wedding to make a point? I'm going to let your daughter experience exactly what you put me through. The disappointment. The scrambling to find alternatives. The feeling of having your dreams crushed by someone with more money and connections. Maybe it'll teach her some empathy. She's learned her lesson. Isn't that enough? Has she? Because from what I've seen on her social media, she's learned that sometimes life isn't fair, not that her actions have consequences. She's playing the victim, not accepting responsibility. I dried the last glass and hung up the towel. You taught me something important 2 years ago, Vivian. You taught me that the world belongs to people who are willing to do whatever it takes to get what they want. You taught me that having money and connections means you can take things that don't belong to you. You taught me that the only thing that matters is winning. I headed toward the door, then turned back. So thank you. I couldn't have done this without everything you taught me. 2 weeks later, I put my plan into motion. I called the chateau and spoke to their event coordinator. I need to discuss some options for my September 22nd booking, I told her. Of course. How can I help you? I've had a change of heart about the wedding. My husband and I eloped in Vegas last month. Very spontaneous, very romantic. But I still have this beautiful venue booked, and I'd hate for it to go to waste. Oh my, that's quite a development. What would you like to do with the booking? I'd like to transfer it to a charity auction, if that's possible. I want the proceeds to go to the Children's Hospital of Philadelphia for their pediatric cancer research fund. The coordinator was thrilled. It was unprecedented, but they were happy to work with me on the details. The hospital could auction off the venue booking to raise funds, and the winning bidder would get a chateau wedding at whatever price they bid, likely far less than the normal cost. This is incredibly generous, she said. I'm sure the hospital will be overjoyed. Just make sure the auction is well publicized, I said. I want as many people as possible to know about it. When the auction went live 2 weeks later, I made sure Melody saw it immediately. I shared the link on my fake Instagram account with a carefully crafted caption. Had to cancel my chateau wedding due to a surprise elopement. We couldn't wait. But so happy it's going to help sick kids instead. Sometimes things work out exactly how they're supposed to. Hoping some lucky couple gets their dream wedding while supporting an amazing cause. Church Chateau Belmont, Church Charity Auction, Pediatric Cancer, Church Dreams Come True. I tagged it with every wedding hashtag Melody followed, ensuring it would show up in her feed. Melody commented within minutes. Wait, can people actually bid on this? How much are bids starting at? The starting bid was $10,000. Still a third of the normal venue cost, but more than Melody could afford. I knew this because she'd been posting about her wedding budget struggles for months, complaining about the cost of everything from flowers to photography. Starting at $10K but could go higher depending on interest, I replied. Such an amazing opportunity for someone. I watched her Instagram stories document her desperate scramble over the next few days. She started a GoFundMe titled, "Help Melody Get Her Dream Wedding Venue." She asked family members for loans. She posted about selling her designer handbag collection. She even considered getting a second job or taking out a personal loan. Meanwhile, word about the charity auction spread through social media and local news. The story of a bride donating her dream venue to help sick children resonated with people, and the bidding became fierce. 5 different couples were actively bidding, driving the price up incrementally. I watched the auction page obsessively, seeing Melody's username appear in the bidding history, only to disappear when the price got too high for her. She posted increasingly frantic Instagram stories as the auction progressed. "Currently at $15,000 and I'm tapped out," she said, crying in her car again. "I can't believe my dream venue is going to slip away again. This is so unfair." The comments on her posts were not sympathetic. "Girl, it's going to charity," one friend wrote. "Maybe focus on that instead of feeling sorry for yourself. You've been complaining about wedding venues for months," another added. "Maybe take this as a sign to spend less and appreciate what you have." The most brutal comment came from a stranger. "Imagine being upset that sick kids are getting money instead of you getting a fancy party." But the comment that really drove the point home came from our mutual cousin Rebecca. "Weren't you guys the ones who took Elena's venue a couple years ago? This feels like karma." Melody's response was defensive and revealing. "That was completely different. We had a legitimate claim to that venue. This is just someone being petty." Several people called her out for that comment, asking how taking someone else's wedding venue could ever be legitimate. Melody ended up deleting the entire post. The auction lasted 2 weeks. I documented every moment, watching Melody's hope turn to desperation, turn to bitter resignation. Her post became increasingly angry and entitled. "I don't understand why the universe keeps blocking me from having my dream wedding," she wrote. "I'm a good person. I deserve this." The final bidding war was between a young couple from Philadelphia and an older pair renewing their vows for their 25th anniversary. The price climbed to $28,000, nearly double what the hospital had hoped for. Melody posted one final story after the auction ended, sobbing harder than I'd ever seen her cry. "I can't believe my dream venue went to charity instead of me," she wept. "I know it's going to a good cause, but this was supposed to be my wedding. I've been planning this since college. Why does everything I want always go to someone else?" The comment section exploded. People were horrified by her selfishness, pointing out that she was literally upset about children with cancer getting funding for treatment. "How can you be mad about kids getting help?" one person wrote. "Maybe this is why you don't get what you want," another added. "Your priorities are backwards." But it was my cousin David's comment that really sealed Melody's fate. "Didn't you take Elena's wedding venue 2 years ago and now you're mad someone else got yours? Do you not see the irony here?" That comment got dozens of likes and sparked a thread where other family members started sharing their memories of the Rosewood Manor situation. The whole story came out in the comments. How Vivian had pumped me for information, threatened the venue with legal action, and stolen our date for Melody's last-minute engagement. So Elena's dream venue got taken and given to Melody, but now Elena's supposed to feel bad that Melody can't have her dream venue? Rebecca wrote. "Make it make sense." Within hours, the post had hundreds of comments, mostly from strangers who'd found it through shares and hashtags. Melody was being dragged across the internet for her entitled attitude and lack of self-awareness. She deleted her entire Instagram account the next day. 3 days later, I got a text from an unknown number. "This is Vivian. We need to talk. Now." I ignored it. She called 5 times over the next hour. I sent each call to voicemail. Her messages got increasingly desperate. "Answer your phone. I know you're getting these messages. This has gone far enough. You're destroying my daughter's reputation." Finally, she showed up at my apartment building at 8 p.m., buzzing my intercom relentlessly until I answered. "You've made your point," she said when I met her in the lobby. "Now fix this." "Fix what exactly?" "Melody's wedding, her reputation, the damage you've caused." I almost laughed. "I didn't cause any damage. I donated my venue booking to charity. I have no control over what other people say about it. You orchestrated this entire thing to humiliate her. I donated $20,000 worth of wedding venue time to help children with cancer. How is that humiliating anyone? Don't play innocent. You knew she wanted that venue. You knew the auction would be public. You knew people would find out about what happened 2 years ago. Actually, I didn't know that last part. I just wanted to do something good with the venue since I didn't need it anymore. If people are connecting it to what you did to me, that's their own conclusion." Vivian's face was flushed with anger. "Give my daughter her venue back." "I can't. It's been sold at auction. The new couple has a contract. Then bid on another venue for her. You clearly have money to throw around. All $20,000 of my savings went to the chateau deposit. I'm broke now, just like any normal person would be after spending that much money. I'll reimburse you, whatever it costs." I considered this for exactly 3 seconds. No. Why not? Haven't you hurt her enough? Have I hurt her? Or have I just refused to enable her? Melody is 26 years old. If she wanted that venue, she should have saved up and booked it herself instead of expecting mommy to steal someone else's date again. You're being vindictive and cruel. I'm being exactly as vindictive and cruel as you were to me. The only difference is that this time, someone else benefited from the collateral damage. Vivian stared at me for a long moment, probably calculating whether she could threaten me the way she'd threatened Mrs. Patterson. "This isn't over," she said finally. "Yes, it is," I replied calmly. "Unless you want me to start talking publicly about what you did 2 years ago. I have documentation. I have witnesses. I have Mrs. Patterson's contact information, and she remembers every detail of how you bullied her into breaking my contract. Vivian's face went pale. You wouldn't. Try me. Your daughter's reputation is already damaged from her own social media posts. Do you really want people to know the full story of how she got her last venue? Vivian left without another word. The charity auction raised $28,000 for pediatric cancer research. The winning bidders were Emma and James, a young couple who sent me a handwritten thank you card for making their dream wedding possible at a price they could afford. You'll never know how much this means to us, Emma wrote. We've been saving for 3 years for our wedding, and we never thought we'd be able to afford somewhere as beautiful as the chateau. The fact that our wedding is also helping sick children makes it even more special. They included photos from their engagement shoot at the venue. They looked so happy, so genuinely grateful for the opportunity. It reminded me why I'd made the right choice. Melody eventually found a different venue, Sunset Country Club, a nice enough place that cost a quarter of what the chateau would have. Her wedding was beautiful from what I saw in the Instagram photos she posted after reactivating her account with heavy privacy settings. But every single post caption mentioned how it wasn't her dream venue and how she'd had to settle for second choice and make the best of a difficult situation. Even on what should have been the happiest day of her life, she couldn't stop playing the victim. The wedding photos showed a forced smile that didn't reach her eyes. In candid shots, she looked genuinely miserable. Vivian stood stiffly beside her in family photos, both of them going through the motions of happiness without feeling it. 6 months later, Derek and I used some of our rebuilt savings for a romantic anniversary trip to Paris. We visited real chateau, took beautiful photos at Versailles, and ate at restaurants we could never afford back home. I may have posted a few photos on Instagram with captions about living our best life, and sometimes the best revenge is happiness, and grateful for all the unexpected blessings that come from staying true to your values. Melody unfollowed me within hours of my first Paris post. A year later, the consequences of Vivian's actions finally caught up with her professionally. Someone, I have no idea who, compiled a detailed report about her pattern of using legal threats to benefit her family and friends. The report included testimony from Mrs. Patterson at Rosewood Manor, documentation of similar incidents with other small businesses, and evidence of her misusing her law firm's letterhead for personal threats. The State Bar Association opened an investigation. Vivian's biggest client, a tech company that prided itself on ethical business practices, terminated their contract after the story was picked up by the local business journal. Her law firm quietly asked her to take early retirement to avoid the negative publicity. She moved to Florida 2 months later. Melody's marriage lasted exactly 18 months. According to family gossip, Cameron got tired of her constant complaints about how their wedding wasn't good enough, how their apartment wasn't nice enough, how their honeymoon wasn't expensive enough. He filed for divorce, claiming irreconcilable differences. But everyone knew the real issue was Melody's inability to appreciate anything she had while obsessing over what she didn't. She moved back in with her parents in Florida, where she posts bitter Instagram stories about how some people get everything handed to them, and how life isn't fair to people with high standards. Last month, Derek and I celebrated our 3rd wedding anniversary. We're planning a trip to Italy for our 5th anniversary, and we're considering renting a villa in Tuscany for the week. We've learned that the most satisfying revenge isn't taking something away from someone. It's building a life so good that their petty cruelties become irrelevant. But sometimes, late at night when I can't sleep, I think about that moment in Mrs. Patterson's voice when she told me my venue had been stolen. I think about Melody's smug face at the barbecue. I think about Vivian telling me to settle for something simpler. And then I think about Emma and James dancing at their chateau wedding, about the $28,000 raised for children with cancer, about the lesson in consequences that Melody learned too late. Derek asks me sometimes if I regret what I did, if I think I went too far. I tell him the truth. I regret that it was necessary. I regret that some people only learn empathy when they experience pain themselves. I regret that Vivian raised a daughter who thinks the world owes her everything she wants. But I don't regret the action itself, because sometimes the only way to stop a bully is to show them what it feels like to be powerless. And sometimes, the best way to honor your own dreams is to make sure someone else's come true instead.